Hello, my dear listeners. Before we begin today's story, I'd like to send a special hug to 3 listeners who are always leaving kind comments here. Nancy Palomo from Paris, Joan Groark from Ireland, and Cathay from Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, USA. It's such a joy to have you here with us. And what about you? Where are you listening from? Let me know in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories are reaching. And who knows? Maybe your name will be featured in the next video too. Now then, let's begin today's story. The office was invisible by design. No brass plaques, no street-level windows. Just a discreet door on the 3rd floor of an unremarkable building, marked only with the number 312. Inside, Helena Adams sat across from a woman who radiated wealth like perfume, expensive and impossible to ignore. Evelyn Kingsley wore her worry like couture. Designer suit, flawless makeup, hands that trembled just slightly as she placed a photograph on the desk between them. "This is my son, Julian." Helena studied the image. Dark brown hair, dark brown eyes that held something guarded. Handsome in a way that suggested he didn't care whether anyone noticed. Standing alone at what looked like a corporate event, surrounded by people but utterly separate. "He's 35 years old," Evelyn continued, her voice catching. "And he's alone, always alone. He works 18-hour days, 7 days a week. He hasn't brought anyone home for dinner in years. He hasn't smiled, really smiled, in longer than I can remember." Helena kept her expression neutral, professional. This was her job, after all. Compatibility Connections specialized in a service most people didn't know existed. They didn't just match couples. They created connections where none existed. Manufactured chemistry, engineered love, or at least the appearance of it. "Mrs. Kingsley," Helena said carefully, "what exactly are you hoping I can do?" The older woman's eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. "I want my son to remember what it feels like to want something besides work. I want him to open his heart again, even if it's just a crack. I'm not asking you to marry him, Miss Adams. I'm asking you to show him that he can still feel." Helena should have said no, should have explained that this particular request crossed too many lines. But there was something in Evelyn's desperation that resonated in a place Helena tried hard to keep locked. She knew what it was like to be alone, to build walls so high that no one could scale them, to forget what it felt like to let someone in. "Tell me about him," Helena said instead. Evelyn's relief was palpable. She leaned forward, pulling out a folder thick with information. "He's brilliant, built his tech company from nothing. He's generous, though he hides it. Donates anonymously to causes he believes in. He loves classical music, though he hasn't been to a concert in years. He runs every morning at 6, drinks his coffee black, reads philosophy before bed." Helena took notes. Detailed notes. This was the part she was good at. The research, the analysis, building a profile like a detective hunting a suspect. She'd been good at it for 5 years now, ever since she'd left the foster system with nothing but a sharp mind and a talent for reading people. She'd learned early that survival meant adaptation, that love was a performance, and she could play any role required. She'd never failed an assignment. "I'll take the case," Helena said. Evelyn's hand covered hers, warm, grateful. "Thank you. Thank you so much." After the woman left, Helena sat alone in the quiet office, staring at Julian Kingsley's photograph. There was something in those dark eyes, something wounded and wary. She recognized it because she saw it in her own mirror every morning. Over the next 2 weeks, Helena became an expert on Julian Kingsley. She learned his routines with the precision of a surveillance operative. Morning runs through Central Park, always the same route. Coffee from the corner shop on Madison, always at 7:15. Lunch at his desk, dinner meetings that ran late, home by 10 if he was lucky. She studied his company's history, read every interview he'd ever given, watched footage of his presentations, noting the way he commanded a room without seeming to try, learned that he valued intelligence over beauty, substance over style, honesty above all else. That last one made her stomach twist. She researched his interests, classical composers, Dostoevsky and Camus, wine from small Italian vineyards, art galleries on rainy Sundays. By the end of week 2, she knew Julian Kingsley better than most people knew their closest friends. Now came the hard part, making it look like fate. Helena stood outside the coffee shop on Madison Avenue at 7:12 on a Monday morning. She wore simple jeans and a cream sweater, her blonde hair pulled back in a casual ponytail. Natural makeup, no designer labels, nothing that screamed effort. She'd learned that men like Julian noticed women who didn't try too hard, women who seemed comfortable in their own skin. At 7:14, she walked into the shop, ordered a black coffee, no sugar, pulled out a worn copy of The Brothers Karamazov, and sat at a table near the window. At 7:15 exactly, Julian Kingsley walked through the door. Helena didn't look up, didn't acknowledge him, just turned a page and took a sip of her coffee, perfectly absorbed in her book. She felt rather than saw him notice her, felt his gaze pause on the book in her hands, felt the moment of recognition, however brief. He ordered his coffee, left, didn't approach. Good. This was a long game, not a sprint. She returned the next morning, same time, same table, different book. Crime and Punishment this time. Julian arrived, ordered. This time his eyes lingered a fraction longer on her book. The third morning she switched to a philosophy text, Camus, The Stranger. This time when Julian received his coffee, he paused by her table. That's an interesting choice for morning reading. His voice was deeper than she'd expected, warmer. Helena looked up, letting surprise cross her face, as if she hadn't orchestrated this exact moment. I find Camus oddly comforting with coffee. The absurdity of existence pairs well with caffeine. A smile ghosted across his lips. Small, fleeting, but real. I've never thought of it that way. Most people haven't. She closed the book, marking her page with care. Most people find him depressing. Are you most people? Helena met his dark brown eyes, let herself smile. I try not to be. He stood there for a moment, coffee in hand, as if deciding something. Then he extended his hand. Julian. Helena. Her hand slipped into his. Warm. Firm. The contact sent an electric current up her arm that she told herself was just good acting. It had to be acting. Do you come here often? He winced immediately. Sorry. That sounded like a terrible pickup line. Helena laughed, genuine and surprised. It did. But I'll forgive you since you have good taste in literature. How do you know I have good taste in literature? You recognized Camus at 20 feet. That says something. That almost smile again. Stronger this time. I run past here every morning and stop for coffee. I've never seen you before. I just moved to the neighborhood. The lie came easily. She'd been practicing it for 2 weeks. Fresh start and all that. Something flickered in his eyes. Understanding, maybe. Fresh starts are underrated. Or overrated, depending on your perspective. Julian tilted his head, studying her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. You're interesting, Helena. You say that like it's a surprise. It is. He glanced at his watch, hesitated. I have to get to work, but maybe I'll see you tomorrow. Maybe. She picked up her book again. If the universe is feeling generous. He left, and Helena let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Stage 1. Complete. Contact established. Interest sparked. The hook set. Now came the careful work of reeling him in without letting him feel the line. But as she sat there, coffee cooling in her hand, she couldn't shake the memory of his almost smile, or the way it had made something in her chest feel dangerously close to hope. 3 weeks of careful orchestration followed. Helena became a fixture in Julian's world without ever seeming to try. She showed up at the coffee shop 4 mornings a week. Never 5, never predictable. Always absorbed in a book he'd likely appreciate, always leaving before he could suggest they sit together. She wanted him curious, interested, chasing. On Friday of week 1, She accidentally ended up at the same art gallery he visited, stood before a Rothko painting for 20 minutes, genuinely moved by the layered colors, when she felt his presence behind her. "You see it too." His voice was quiet, reverent. "See what?" Helena didn't turn around. The violence beneath the beauty. The way he makes chaos look like peace. She glanced at him then, found him staring at the painting with an expression of such raw longing that something in her chest cracked. "Is that what you see? Violence? Isn't that what we all are underneath?" Julian's dark eyes met hers. Chaos pretending to be order? Helena should have had a clever response, something flirty and light. Instead, she found herself saying, "Maybe some of us are order pretending to be chaos. Maybe the violence is in the pretending." He studied her face like she was a painting he couldn't quite decipher. "That's a lonely way to live." "You say that like you don't know exactly what I mean." His jaw tightened. For a moment she thought she'd pushed too far. Then that almost smile appeared. "Would you like to get coffee? Real coffee, not the corner shop version?" This was it. The first real invitation. The moment where casual became intentional. "I'd like that," Helena said. They went to a small cafe 3 blocks away, sat across from each other in a corner booth. And for 2 hours, Helena played her role perfectly. She mirrored his body language, laughed at his dry humor, asked questions that made him feel heard, seen, understood. She revealed carefully curated truths about herself. The foster system, yes, but framed as something that made her strong rather than broken. Her work at the consulting firm, vague enough to avoid suspicion. Her love of literature and art and all the things she'd researched he valued. She was perfect, and Julian was falling for it. She could see it in the way his shoulders relaxed as they talked, the way his smiles came easier, the way he looked at her like she was water and he'd been dying of thirst. But something strange was happening. She was enjoying this. Not the conquest, not the successful execution of her plan, but him. The way his eyes lit up when he talked about a new algorithm his team had cracked. The way he listened, really listened when she spoke. The way he was brilliant and lonely and trying so hard not to show it. "I should go," Julian said reluctantly as the cafe began to close. "But I'd like to see you again, if you're interested." Helena hesitated just long enough to seem genuine. "I'm interested." He smiled, a real smile this time, full and unguarded. "Friday? Dinner?" "Friday," she agreed. He walked her to her subway stop, stood there awkwardly, hands in his pockets, like a teenager on a first date. "I'm not very good at this," he admitted. "It's been a while." "Good at what?" "Dating. Connecting. Any of it." Helena reached out, touched his arm lightly. "You're doing fine, Julian." He looked at her hand on his arm like it was something precious, something fragile. "Good night, Helena." "Good night." She descended into the subway, and only when she was alone in the crowd did she let herself acknowledge the truth. This was getting complicated. The weeks that followed blurred together in a series of carefully planned, spontaneous encounters. Helena engineered their meeting at his favorite wine bar, made sure to be reading his favorite poet when he arrived. Wore amber, the scent his research suggested he found most appealing on women. Laughed at his jokes and challenged his opinions, and made him work just hard enough to keep him interested. She was a master craftsman, and Julian Kingsley was her finest work. But with each conversation, each shared meal, each moment of genuine connection, Helena felt the walls she'd built around herself beginning to crack. Julian was nothing like she'd expected. She'd prepared herself for a spoiled rich man, arrogant and entitled. Instead, she found someone who donated anonymously to children's charities, who remembered the names of servers and doormen, who worked himself to exhaustion not for greed, but because he genuinely believed his technology could help people. He was kind, genuinely, deeply kind, and so heartbreakingly lonely. They'd been seeing each other for 6 weeks when he finally told her about his company. Not bragging, not trying to impress. Just sharing a part of his life over dinner at a quiet Italian restaurant, she'd learned, was his favorite. "It's not just about profit," he said, gesturing with his wine glass. "The software we're developing could revolutionize how rural communities access medical care. Telemedicine that actually works. That actually helps people who can't get to a hospital." Helena watched him, this man who pretended not to care about anything, pour passion into describing technology that would save lives. "That's beautiful, Julian." He looked embarrassed. "It's just business." "No." She leaned forward, caught his hand. "It's not. You're trying to make the world better. That's not just business." His fingers tightened around hers. "Most people don't see it that way. Most people are idiots." He laughed, actually laughed. The sound was rich and surprised and utterly genuine. "You're something else, Helena Adams." "Is that a good thing?" "It's the best thing." His thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. "I haven't felt this way in a very long time." Her heart stuttered. "What way?" "Like maybe I'm not as alone as I thought." The words hit her like a physical blow, because she felt it too. This impossible, inconvenient thing growing between them. This connection that wasn't supposed to be real. "Julian," she started, but he leaned forward, his eyes searching hers. "Can I tell you something? Something I don't talk about?" "Of course." He was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was raw. 10 years ago, I was in love. Really, truly in love. Her name was Sarah. We were going to get married." Helena's chest tightened. This wasn't in the research. This was something deeper. Something real. "What happened?" she asked softly. "Car accident." The words came out flat, emotionless, the only way he could say them. "I was driving. We were on our way to look at wedding venues. A drunk driver ran a red light. I survived. She didn't." Helena's hand covered his. "Julian, I'm so sorry. I couldn't save her." His voice cracked. "She was right there and I couldn't do anything. And then she was gone. It wasn't your fault, wasn't it?" He pulled his hand away. "I was driving. I should have seen the other car. Should have done something. Should have—" "Stop." Helena moved to his side of the booth, took his face in her hands. "It wasn't your fault. Grief doesn't require blame, Julian. It just requires time." He stared at her, eyes bright with unshed tears. "How do you know that?" "Because I've spent my whole life blaming myself for things I couldn't control, for being abandoned, for ending up in foster care, for never being chosen." The truth spilled out before she could stop it. "But eventually, I had to accept that some things just are. Some pain doesn't have a purpose. It just is." Julian's hands came up to cover hers. "You were chosen, Helena. I choose you." And then he kissed her. It was soft, tentative, achingly sweet. And in that moment, with his lips on hers and his pain tangling with her own, Helena felt something inside her shatter. This wasn't part of the plan. This was real. When they pulled apart, Julian rested his forehead against hers. "I haven't let anyone in since Sarah. I tried a few times, but all I found were women who saw dollar signs instead of a person. Women who wanted what I had, not who I was." His words were knives, each one cutting deeper. "But you," he continued, his voice a whisper. "You see me, the real me. I don't know how to explain it, but with you, I don't feel alone anymore." Helena closed her eyes. Let guilt wash over her like ice water, because he was wrong. She didn't see him. She saw what she'd been paid to see. She'd orchestrated every moment, every connection, every feeling he thought was spontaneous. She was exactly like the women he'd described. Worse even, because at least they'd been honest about their motives. "Helena?" His voice pulled her back. "Are you okay?" She opened her eyes, found him watching her with such tenderness that it physically hurt. "I'm fine. Just overwhelmed." "Good overwhelmed or bad overwhelmed?" "I'm not sure yet." He smiled, kissed her forehead. "That's honest. I like that about you. You're always honest." The words were acid on her skin. They left the restaurant hand in hand. Julian walked her home, his arm around her waist like she was something precious. At her door, he kissed her again. Deeper this time, more certain. "I'll call you tomorrow," he murmured against her lips. "I'd like that." She watched him walk away, his hands in his pockets, his shoulders straighter than she'd ever seen them. Inside her apartment, Helena collapsed against the door. What had she done? She'd set out to make a lonely man fall in love. Mission accomplished. He was falling, maybe had already fallen, but so had she. And when he found out the truth, when not if, because secrets like this never stayed buried, it would destroy him. It would destroy them both. Helena pulled out her phone, stared at Evelyn Kingsley's number. She should call. Should explain that this had gone too far. Should return the money and walk away before anyone got hurt. But her finger hovered over the screen, unable to press call. Because walking away meant never seeing Julian again, never hearing his laugh, never feeling his arms around her, never being the person he thought she was, the person she desperately wanted to be. She set the phone down, pressed her hands to her face. Tomorrow. She'd figure it out tomorrow. Tonight she'd let herself pretend just a little longer that this was real, that she was the woman Julian Kingsley thought he'd chosen. That love, for once in her carefully constructed life, wasn't just another performance. 2 months became 3, and Helena found herself drowning in the beautiful lie she'd created. Julian introduced her to his life piece by Careful Peace, his favorite bookstore where he spent Saturday afternoons, the small jazz club where he went to think, the rooftop garden where he ran when Central Park felt too crowded. Each place he shared felt like a gift, like trust. And with each gift, Helena's guilt grew heavier. They fell into a rhythm that felt dangerously close to real. Morning texts that made her smile before she was fully awake. Lunch breaks stolen between meetings. Dinners that stretched into evenings, evenings that stretched into nights. He was careful with her, respectful, never pushed for more than she was ready to give. And somehow, that made it worse. Because it would be easier if he were the arrogant billionaire she'd expected. Easier to lie to someone who deserved it. But Julian deserved better than her. "My grandmother wants to meet you," he said one evening, his voice casual but his eyes uncertain. They were in his apartment, a penthouse that somehow managed to feel more like a home than a showpiece. Books everywhere, plants that someone actually watered, furniture that invited you to sit rather than just look. Helena's heart kicked against her ribs. "Your grandmother?" "Rose. She's 93 and terrifying in the best way." His smile was soft. "She raised me after my father died, taught me everything important. Meeting family." This was a line she'd never crossed in an assignment, a line she shouldn't cross now. "Julian, I don't know if that's... She already knows about you." He took her hand. "I might have mentioned that I've met someone special, and she demanded to meet you before, and I quote, 'I kicked the bucket and missed my chance.'" Helena couldn't help but laugh. "She sounds intense." "She is, but she'll love you." His thumb traced patterns on her wrist. "Everyone loves you." The words should have felt like victory. Instead, they felt like accusation. "When?" Helena heard herself ask. "Sunday? Lunch at her place. Fair warning, she'll ask inappropriate questions and judge your posture." "Sounds delightful." "It will be." He pulled her closer. "Because you'll be there." Sunday arrived with the weight of inevitability. Helena dressed carefully, conservative but not stuffy, elegant but not trying too hard. She was playing to an audience of one, and everything she'd learned suggested Rose Kingsley saw through pretense like glass. Julian picked her up at 11, nervous in a way she'd never seen him. He adjusted his tie 3 times in the elevator, checked his hair in the lobby mirror, reached for her hand like he needed the anchor. "She's going to love you," Helena said, squeezing his fingers. "Or she'll see right through this and tell me I'm an idiot." Helena's stomach dropped. "See through what?" How completely gone I am for you." He stopped, turned to face her. "Helena, I know it's only been a few months. I know we should probably take this slower. But I need you to know. I'm falling in love with you." The words hung in the air between them. Beautiful. Devastating. True. "Julian." "You don't have to say it back." He cupped her face gently. "I just needed you to know. Because I haven't felt this way since Sarah. And I'm terrified, but I'm also so grateful that you wandered into that coffee shop and reminded me what it feels like to be alive." Helena kissed him rather than speak. Kissed him like she could pour everything she felt into the contact. All the guilt and longing and impossible want. When they pulled apart, his eyes were soft. "Come on. Let's go meet the woman who taught me how to love in the first place." Rose Kingsley lived in a brownstone in Brooklyn that smelled like lavender and old books. She opened the door herself, a tiny woman with white hair and eyes exactly like Julian's, sharp and knowing. "So you're the one who put the light back in my grandson's eyes." Her voice was raspy but strong. "Come in, child. Let me look at you properly." Helena stepped inside, and those dark eyes swept over her with the precision of a surgeon. "Good posture. That's something. Pretty but not vain. Interesting." Rose turned to Julian. "Where did you find her?" "Coffee shop. She was reading Camus." "Ha, a thinker. Much better than those painted dolls you used to bring around." She gestured toward the living room. "Sit. I've made lunch. And before you ask, Julian, yes, I did it myself. I'm 93, not dead." Lunch was intimate and terrifying. Rose asked questions that seemed casual but weren't. Where Helena grew up, what she did for work, what she valued in life. Helena answered with carefully crafted truths. The foster system, yes. Consulting work, vague but plausible. Values of honesty and kindness and loyalty. The irony wasn't lost on her, but something strange happened as the meal progressed. Rose wasn't interrogating her. She was seeing her, really seeing her, past the performance Helena had perfected. "You've been hurt," Rose said suddenly, setting down her fork. "Someone taught you that love is dangerous." Helena's breath caught. "I don't deny it. I can see it in your eyes. That wariness, that wall." The old woman's gaze softened. "But you're here anyway. That takes courage." "Grandmother," Julian started, but Rose waved him off. "Hush, I'm talking to Helena." She leaned forward. "Here's what I want you to know, child. My grandson has the biggest heart of anyone I've ever known, and it's been broken badly, first by death, then by cruelty disguised as affection." "I know," Helena whispered. "Do you?" Rose's eyes bored into hers. "Because the way you look at him tells me you do. The way you touch him, like he's something precious. The way you listen when he speaks, like his words matter." She reached across the table, covered Helena's hand with her own. "You love him." It wasn't a question. Helena felt tears prick her eyes. "Yes." "Then don't waste it. Don't let fear make you stupid." Rose squeezed her hand. "I've lived 93 years, and I'll tell you the secret to life. Love is terrifying and messy, and often hurts like hell. But it's also the only thing that makes any of this worthwhile." After lunch, Julian walked Helena through Rose's garden while his grandmother napped. The September air was crisp, leaves just beginning to turn. "She likes you," Julian said, pulling Helena against his side. "I can tell." "How?" "She didn't interrogate you about your intentions or warn me about moving too fast. That's her version of a blessing." Helena rested her head on his shoulder. "She's remarkable." "She is." He was quiet for a moment. "After Sarah died, Rose was the one who kept me human, who made sure I didn't disappear completely into work, who reminded me that pain doesn't last forever." "Did she know Sarah?" "She loved her, which made it worse in a way. Losing her meant watching Rose grieve too. Watching everyone I loved hurt because of what happened." Helena turned to face him. "Julian, You have to forgive yourself. That accident wasn't your fault. How can you be so sure? Because I know you. You're the man who works 18-hour days to create technology that helps people, who donates anonymously because you don't need recognition, who held my hand through a panic attack last week and never asked for an explanation. Her voice cracked. You're good, Julian. All the way through. And good people don't deserve to carry guilt that isn't theirs. He stared at her like she'd just handed him something he'd been searching for his entire life. How do you do that? Do what? Make me believe I'm better than I think I am. I'm just telling you what I see. Julian pulled her close, buried his face in her hair. I love you, Helena Adams. I know I already said it, but I need to say it again. I love you, completely, terrifyingly, without reservation. Helena closed her eyes. Let herself feel the warmth of his arms, the steady beat of his heart against her cheek, the impossible rightness of this moment. I love you too, she whispered. And it was true. Every word. She loved him, which made what she'd done unforgivable. That night, alone in her apartment, Helena made a decision. She had to tell him the truth, not because it was the right thing to do, though it was, but because he deserved to know who he'd fallen in love with, deserved to make his own choice with all the information, even if that choice meant losing him forever. She'd go to his apartment tomorrow. She'd tell him everything, about Evelyn hiring her, about the research and the orchestration and the careful manipulation of every moment. She'd tell him that it started as a job but became something real, that she'd fallen in love with him despite every intention not to. And then she'd walk away, give him space to process, to decide if any of this could be salvaged. Her phone rang. Julian's name lit up the screen. Hey, she answered, her voice thick. Hey yourself. I know it's late, but I couldn't sleep without hearing your voice. Helena's chest ached. Julian. Rose called after you left. She wanted me to know that she thinks you're the best thing that's ever happened to me. Her exact words were, don't be an idiot. Marry that girl before someone with sense steals her. Helena laughed despite the tears now streaming down her face. She's very direct. She is. But she's also never wrong. He paused. Helena, I know this is fast. I know we're still figuring things out. But I need you to know, you're it for me. I don't know how I got this lucky finding you in that coffee shop, but I'm not letting you go. Julian, there's something I need to tell you. Tomorrow, whatever it is, tell me tomorrow. Right now, I just want to fall asleep thinking about how lucky I am. Helena closed her eyes. Okay, tomorrow. Good night, love. Good night. She hung up and stared at the phone in her hand. Tomorrow, she'd tell him everything. Tomorrow, she'd break both their hearts. But tonight, just for tonight, she'd let herself believe the beautiful lie just a little longer. Helena woke Tuesday morning with the weight of confession pressing against her chest like a stone. Today. She would tell him today. She dressed in jeans and a simple sweater. No armor, no performance. Just herself, stripped of all the careful construction. The subway ride to Julian's penthouse felt like traveling to her own execution. She'd rehearsed the words 1,000 times. Julian, I need to tell you something. Julian, this started as something else. Julian, I was hired by your mother. None of them felt adequate. By the time she reached his building, her hands were shaking. The doorman recognized her now, smiled warmly. Good morning, Miss Adams. Mr. Kingsley expecting you? I'm surprising him, Helena said. The truth and a lie in the same breath. He's home. 23rd floor. The elevator ride took forever, and no time at all. Her reflection in the mirrored walls showed a woman pale with fear, eyes too bright, throat working against tears that wanted to fall. She knocked on Julian's door. Once. Twice. No answer. Helena frowned. His car was in the garage. The doorman said he was home. She tried the handle. It opened, unlocked. Unusual for Julian, who was meticulous about security. Julian? Her voice echoed in the hallway. It's me. Silence. Helena stepped inside, her heart beginning to race. Something felt wrong. The air was too still, too heavy. She moved through the living room, the kitchen, all empty. Then she saw it. The door to his study, half open, light spilling out. Julian? She pushed the door wider and froze. Julian sat in his desk chair, turned toward the window. A glass of whiskey in his hand, the bottle half empty beside him. His hair was disheveled, like he'd been running his hands through it for hours. His shirt was wrinkled, untucked. But it was his eyes that stopped her breath. Red-rimmed, swollen, destroyed. Julian. Helena moved toward him. What happened? Are you okay? He didn't look at her, just stared at the amber liquid in his glass like it held answers he desperately needed. When were you going to tell me? His voice was flat, emotionless, worse than anger. Helena's blood turned to ice. Tell you what? Don't. The word came out sharp. He finally looked at her, and the pain in his eyes nearly brought her to her knees. Don't lie to me. Not now. Not after everything. Her mouth went dry. Julian, I don't... When were you going to tell me? The explosion of sound made her flinch. Julian surged to his feet, the whiskey sloshing in his glass. When were you going to tell me that this whole thing has been a lie? That you were hired to manipulate me? That every moment, every conversation, every touch was just part of the job? Helena felt the world tilt beneath her. How did you... My mother. His laugh was bitter, broken. She came here this morning, crying. Said she couldn't live with the guilt anymore. That she needed to tell me the truth before things went any further. He set the glass down with trembling hands, turned to face her fully, and the devastation in his expression made Helena want to die. She told me everything, Helena. Everything. How she hired you. How you researched me like I was a case study. How you engineered every accidental meeting. How you became exactly the woman I would fall for. Julian, please let me explain. Explain what? His voice dropped to a whisper. Somehow that was worse than the shouting. Explain how you made me fall in love with someone who doesn't even exist. Explain how you listened to me talk about Sarah, about my pain, about how I'd been hurt by women who only wanted my money, and you were doing the exact same thing. It's not like that. Then what is it like? He moved closer, and she could smell the whiskey on his breath, see the barely contained anguish in every line of his body. Tell me, Helena. What was I? A project? A challenge? How much did she pay you to make the broken billionaire feel something again? Tears streamed down Helena's face. It started that way. But Julian, that's not what it became. I fell in love with you. Really fell in love with you. When? The question was a knife. When did you fall in love with me? After you'd already learned everything about me? After you'd already orchestrated our entire relationship? How do I know any of it was real? The kiss, Helena said desperately. That first kiss in the restaurant. That was real. Everything after that was real. Was it? Julian's voice cracked. Or was that just part of the performance? Did you practice that too? Figure out exactly how to kiss me to make me fall harder? No. She reached for him, but he stepped back. Julian, please. I know I was wrong. I know I should have told you sooner. But what I feel for you is real. I swear to you, it's real. He stared at her, and she watched him try to believe. Watched him want to believe. Watched hope and doubt war across his face. My mother came here in tears, he said quietly. Told me she'd made a terrible mistake. That she'd only wanted to help me, to see me happy again. She never meant for it to go this far. Never meant for me to actually fall in love. His hand came up, hovering near her face like he wanted to touch her but couldn't quite manage it. She said you were a good person, that you genuinely cared about me. But Helena, how can I believe that? How can I trust anything about this? Because I'm here. Helena grabbed his hand, pressed it to her cheek. I came here this morning to tell you the truth, to confess everything, because I couldn't live with the lie anymore. Convenient timing. But his thumb stroked her cheek, betraying him. My mother tells me first, and suddenly you were planning to confess? I was. I swear I was. Last night on the phone I tried to tell you, but you said tomorrow and I... Her voice broke. Julian, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. He closed his eyes. The woman I fell in love with, did she ever exist? She exists. Helena's voice was raw. She's me, the real me. Everything I told you about my past, about foster care, about feeling alone, that was all true. The only lie was how we met. The only lie? He pulled his hand away. Helena, you constructed our entire relationship. You became exactly who I would love. How is that only anything? Because the person I became is who I really am. The words tore out of her. You want to know the truth? Fine. Here it is. I've spent my whole life playing roles, being what people needed me to be, because that's how you survive when no one ever chose you for yourself. She was crying harder now, but she didn't care. But with you, I stopped playing. I stopped performing, because you saw me, the real me, and you loved her anyway. And that terrified me more than any lie I've ever told. Julian's jaw worked. She could see him struggling, wanting to believe her, wanting to forgive. I love you, Helena whispered. I love you so much it hurts, and I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know I broke something precious, but please believe that what we have is real. For a moment, just a moment, she thought he might reach for her, might pull her close and tell her they'd figure it out. Instead, he turned away. Get out. His voice was dead, empty. Julian, get out, Helena. He moved to the window, his back to her. I can't look at you right now. I can't hear your voice. I can't think straight with you here. Please don't do this. Let me stay. Let me explain. There's nothing to explain. He finally looked at her, and the coldness in his eyes made her stagger. You were hired to make me fall in love. Congratulations. You succeeded. Now leave. Helena took a step toward him. Julian, I love you. Don't. The word was a roar. Don't you dare say that to me. Get out of my apartment. Get out of my life. Just go. She tried one more time. Moved to embrace him, to make him feel what she felt. He caught her wrists, held her away from him, and when he spoke, his voice was quiet, final, devastating. Leave, now, before I say something we'll both regret. Helena stumbled backward. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only stare at this man she loved, this man she'd destroyed, and watch him shut down completely. I'm sorry, she whispered one last time. Julian didn't respond, just turned back to the window. Helena walked out of his study, out of his apartment, into the elevator that felt like a coffin. She made it to the street before her legs gave out, collapsed onto a bench and sobbed until she couldn't breathe, sobbed until passers-by gave her concerned looks, sobbed until she had nothing left. She'd known this would happen, had known from the moment she took Evelyn's money that this ending was inevitable. But knowing and experiencing were different things. She just lost the best thing that ever happened to her, and she had no one to blame but herself. The first week was survival. Helena moved through her days like a ghost. She couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, could barely function beyond the basic necessities of existing. She quit her job at Compatibility Connections, sent a resignation email at 3 a.m. when the guilt wouldn't let her rest, refused Evelyn's tearful phone calls, blocked every number connected to her old life. She needed to disappear, to become no one, to stop being the woman who'd destroyed Julian Kingsley. Money was tight immediately. The rent on her apartment, paid for by the agency, would run out at the end of the month. She needed work. Fast. On day 9, she found herself standing outside a 24-hour diner called Mel's, staring at a help wanted sign in the window. The manager, a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and no-nonsense attitude, took one look at Helena's hollow expression and hired her on the spot. You look like someone who needs to keep busy, Mel said. Night shift okay? 11 to 7? Perfect. Helena's voice was rough from disuse. Night shifts meant she didn't have to see the sun, didn't have to pretend to be okay when daylight exposed all her cracks. She worked. That's all she did. 6 nights a week, serving coffee and pie to insomniacs and shift workers and lost souls. During the day, she slept fitfully in a studio apartment she'd found in a neighborhood that didn't ask questions. She didn't let herself think about Julian. Didn't let herself wonder how he was doing. Didn't let herself hope that maybe, someday, he'd forgive her. Because he wouldn't. Shouldn't. She didn't deserve it. But late at night, when the diner was nearly empty and her mind had nothing to do but wonder, she'd remember. The way he smiled when he talked about his work. The way his eyes softened when he looked at her. The way his voice sounded when he said, "I love you," for the first time. The way he'd looked at her in his study. Broken. Betrayed. Destroyed. Those memories hurt worse than anything she'd ever felt. Week 3, a regular customer asked if she was okay. "You seem sad," he said, stirring too much sugar into his coffee. "Boyfriend trouble?" Helena managed a hollow smile. "Something like that." "He an idiot?" "No." The word came out fierce. "I'm the idiot. I broke something I can't fix." The man nodded sagely. "Most things can be fixed if both people want it bad enough." But that was the problem, wasn't it? Helena wanted it desperately. But Julian? Julian probably wanted to forget she ever existed. She didn't blame him. Meanwhile, in a penthouse across the city, Julian Kingsley was falling apart. The first week, he threw himself into work with manic intensity. 18-hour days became 20-hour days. He stopped going home, sleeping on his office couch when exhaustion finally took him. His assistant grew concerned. His COO suggested a vacation. His board members exchanged worried glances in meetings where Julian's attention clearly wasn't present. But work didn't help. Nothing helped. Because every time he closed his eyes, he saw Helena, saw her face when she told him she loved him, saw her tears as she begged him to believe her, saw the devastation in her expression when he told her to leave. He'd replayed that morning 1,000 times, analyzed every word, every moment, trying to separate the truth from the lies. The problem was, he couldn't tell the difference anymore. Had she really fallen for him? Or was that just what she told Marks when the job went sideways? But then, he'd remember Rose's words at lunch. "You love him." The certainty in his grandmother's voice. The way Helena had looked when she admitted it. That hadn't been a performance. He knew performances. He'd been subjected to enough of them over the years. Women who wanted access to his wealth, who played roles to get what they needed. Helena's love hadn't looked like that. It had looked terrified and desperate and utterly real. By week 4, Julian stopped going to work entirely. He sat in his apartment staring at nothing, drinking too much, sleeping too little, thinking about a blonde woman with sad eyes who'd made him feel alive again. Rose showed up on a Wednesday morning, letting herself in with the spare key Julian had given her years ago. She took one look at him, unshaven, still in pajamas at noon, surrounded by empty takeout containers, and shook her head. "You look like death warmed over," she announced. "Good to see you too, grandmother." "Don't get smart with me." Rose moved through the apartment, opening curtains with military efficiency. "You're being an idiot." "I'm heartbroken. There's a difference." "Is there?" She sat across from him, those dark eyes piercing. "Because from where I'm sitting, you're just being stubborn." Julian's jaw tightened. "She lied to me about everything." "Did she?" Rose leaned forward. "Tell me, what did she lie about? Did she lie about loving literature? About being from foster care? About caring for you?" "She lied about how we met, about why she approached me, about the circumstances." Rose cut him off. "Not the feelings. Julian, that girl loves you. I saw it the moment you walked into my house. The way she looked at you? That wasn't an act. How do you know?" "Because I've been alive 93 years, and I know the difference between performance and truth." She reached across, gripped his hand. Yes, she was hired. Yes, she made mistakes. But she fell in love with you anyway. That's not part of any job description. Julian's throat tightened. What if you're wrong? What if it was all just... What if I'm right? Rose squeezed his hand. What if you're throwing away the best thing that ever happened to you because you're too scared to take a risk? I took a risk with Sarah. Look how that ended. Sarah died in an accident that wasn't your fault. That's tragedy, not betrayal. Her voice softened. But you survived it. And you survived the years after when shallow women tried to use you. You survived all of it. So tell me, why are you so willing to give up on the one woman who actually saw you? Because she was hired to see me, the words burst out. Every moment was calculated. Every conversation was researched. How do I trust that? How do I trust her? The same way she trusted you. Rose's eyes were gentle now. By taking a leap of faith. By choosing to believe that love, real love, is worth the risk of getting hurt. Julian stared at his grandmother. This woman who'd loved and loved again. Who'd buried a husband and a son, but never let it make her bitter. What if I forgive her and she does it again? What if she doesn't? Rose stood, moved to the door. What if you spend the rest of your life wondering, what if, instead of finding out for sure? She paused in the doorway. Your mother called me yesterday, crying. Said she made a terrible mistake hiring that girl. But you want to know what I told her? Julian waited. I told her she gave you a gift. Because left to your own devices, you never would have let anyone in. You would have worked yourself into an early grave, alone and miserable. But Helena, she slipped past your defenses. Made you remember what it feels like to be human. Rose's smile was sad. So yes, the means were deceptive. But the end result? A man who laughs again. Who looks forward to something besides spreadsheets. Who loves and is loved in return. That's not something to throw away lightly. She left him with that. Left him sitting in his expensive apartment with too many thoughts and not enough answers. Julian spent the next 3 days thinking. About Helena. About Sarah. About all the ways love had hurt him and all the ways it had healed him. About the way Helena had cried when he told her to leave. The way her voice had broken when she said, I love you. The way she'd looked at him in Rose's garden and said, You're good, Julian. All the way through. Like she believed it. Like she saw something in him worth loving. On the 4th day, he made a decision. He showered, shaved, put on real clothes, got in his car and drove to the last address he had for Helena. The apartment building was modest, working class, nothing like the places they used to meet. He knocked on her door, no answer. He knocked again, waited, still nothing. A neighbor poked her head out. She doesn't live here anymore, moved out 2 weeks ago. Didn't leave a forwarding address. Julian's heart sank. Did she say where she was going? Nope, just packed up and left. Seemed in a hurry. Back in his car, Julian pulled out his phone, called his assistant. I need you to find someone for me. Helena Adams, last known address. He rattled it off. I need to know where she is now. Sir, I'm not sure that's... Please. The word came out raw. It's important. There was a pause. I'll do what I can. It took 3 days. 3 days of Julian pacing his apartment, second-guessing his decision, wondering if Helena even wanted to be found. Then his phone rang. Sir, I found her. She's working at a diner called Mel's, night shift, 11 to 7. Julian checked his watch, 10:30. Thank you. Send me the address. He drove across the city with his heart in his throat. What would he say? What if she refused to talk to him? What if Rose was wrong and it had all been an act? What if it wasn't? He parked outside Mel's at 11:45. Through the window, he could see her. Helena. His Helena. Blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail. Wearing a simple uniform. Pouring coffee for a table of truckers. She looked exhausted. thinner. The light in her eyes dimmed, but she was there, real, alive. Julian sat in his car and watched her work. Watched her smile at customers with effort. Watched her move through the motions of a job that was clearly beneath her intelligence. Watched her and fell in love all over again. At 2 a.m, the diner emptied out. Only a handful of customers remained. Julian took a breath, got out of the car, walked to the door. The bell chimed as he entered. Helena looked up from wiping down the counter and froze. Their eyes met across the diner. Everything else faded. The fluorescent lights, the smell of coffee and grease, the late-night radio playing somewhere in the background. Just them, just this moment. Julian walked toward her, slowly, giving her time to run if she wanted to. She didn't move, just stared at him like he was a ghost, like she couldn't quite believe he was real. He stopped in front of her, close enough to see the dark circles under her eyes, close enough to see her hands trembling where they gripped the counter. Helena Adams. His voice came out rough, uncertain. We need to talk. For a long moment, Helena just stared. Julian. Here. Real. Standing in the harsh fluorescent light of Mel's diner at 2 a.m, looking like he'd driven across the city without stopping to think it through. How did you find me? Her voice came out barely above a whisper. Does it matter? I don't know. Does it? Julian's jaw tightened. Can we sit, please? Helena glanced around the diner. The few remaining customers were absorbed in their own worlds. Mel was in the kitchen, probably not paying attention. And Helena was so tired of running, so tired of pretending she was okay. Last booth, she gestured to the corner, the most private spot in the place. Give me a minute. She poured 2 coffees with shaking hands. Black for him. Too much sugar for her, because some habits were hard to break. Carried them to the booth where Julian sat, his hands folded on the table like he didn't know what else to do with them. Helena slid into the seat across from him, set the coffees down, and waited. You look tired, Julian said finally. So do you. I haven't been sleeping well. Neither have I. The conversation was stilted, careful, like they were strangers instead of 2 people who'd loved each other with everything they had. Julian wrapped his hands around his coffee cup, stared at it like it held answers. I've been thinking, for weeks, about what happened, about what you said, about all of it. Helena's chest tightened. Julian, let me finish. His eyes met hers. Please. I need to say this or I never will. She nodded, folded her hands in her lap to stop them from reaching for him. What you did was wrong, he said. The words were knives, but his tone was gentle. Accepting my mother's money, researching me, orchestrating our meetings. All of it. It was manipulative and dishonest, and it hurt me worse than anything has hurt me since Sarah died. Helena felt tears prick her eyes but forced them back. I know, but, Julian took a breath. But I've been replaying everything in my head, every conversation, every moment, and I keep coming back to the same question. What question? When did it stop being an act? His voice was rough now, raw. Because I don't think it was an act, Helena. Not all of it. Not the important parts. She stared at him. What are you saying? I'm saying my grandmother came to see me. Called me an idiot for letting you go. Said that when we came to lunch, she could see how much you loved me. That it was written all over your face. Julian leaned forward. I'm saying I've been a coward, pushing you away because I was scared of being hurt again. But you know what? I'm hurt anyway. Because you're not in my life. Helena's vision blurred with tears. Julian, I'm so sorry. I never meant... I know. He reached across the table, stopped just short of touching her hand. Helena, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Can you do that? Yes. The word came out choked. When you came to my apartment that morning, When I told you to leave, you said you'd fallen in love with me, that it was real. His eyes searched hers. Was it? Or was that something you tell people when the job goes wrong? Helena let the tears fall now, didn't bother to wipe them away. It was real. It is real. Julian, I've lied to so many people in my life. About who I am, what I want, how I feel. But what I feel for you, that's the most honest thing I've ever experienced. When? His voice was barely audible. When did you fall for me? The first real kiss. She smiled through her tears. In the restaurant. When you told me about Sarah. When you let me see your pain. That's when I knew I was in trouble. Because I wasn't playing a role anymore. I was just me. And you were just you. And everything got so complicated. Julian's hand finally moved, covered hers on the table. The touch sent electricity through her entire body. I want to believe you, he said. I want to so badly it scares me. But you don't know if you can trust me. I don't know if I can trust anyone anymore. His thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. But here's the thing, Helena. I don't want to not trust you. I don't want to spend the rest of my life wondering what if. I don't want to be the kind of man who's too scared to take a chance on love because it might hurt. Helena's breath caught. What are you saying? I'm saying I want to try. His grip on her hand tightened. I want to start over. Not as the people we pretended to be, but as who we really are. I want to know the real Helena Adams, the woman who grew up in foster care and survived, the woman who works night shifts at a diner because she needed to disappear, the woman who fell in love with me despite every intention not to. And I want to know the real you, Helena whispered. Not the CEO who has everything together, but the man who still grieves for Sarah, who's terrified of being hurt, who works too hard because he doesn't know how else to exist. Julian smiled. Small, tentative, but real. We're a mess, aren't we? The biggest mess. So where do we start? Helena thought about it. About all the lies and all the truths and everything tangled between them. About second chances and forgiveness and the terrifying possibility of hope. We start with honesty, she said. Complete, brutal honesty. No more performances. No more carefully constructed versions of ourselves. Just the truth, even when it's ugly. I can do that. Julian's eyes were steady on hers. Can you? I want to. Her voice shook. I'm scared, but I want to. Good. He stood, still holding her hand. Then here's my first truth. I love you, Helena Adams. I loved the woman I thought you were, and I think I'll love the woman you actually are even more. But I need time. I need us to rebuild this from the ground up. Helena rose to meet him. How do we do that? We start with a date. His smile was wider now. A real one. Where we tell each other embarrassing stories and reveal our worst habits and figure out if we actually like each other when we're not trying to impress. I think I'd like that. When do you get off work? 7. Then I'll pick you up at 7. We'll get breakfast somewhere terrible, drink too much coffee, and start figuring out who we are when we're not pretending. Helena felt hope bloom in her chest. Fragile, uncertain, but undeniably there. What if we can't make this work? What if the real us doesn't fit? Then at least we'll know. Julian pulled her closer, not into a kiss, just into his space. But Helena, I don't think that's going to happen. Because the woman I fell in love with? She's still you. The circumstances were manufactured, but your heart wasn't. I believe that now. How can you be so sure? Because you're here. He gestured to the diner. Working night shifts at a job that's beneath you. Living in what I'm guessing is a terrible apartment. You didn't disappear to protect yourself, Helena. You disappeared because you thought it's what I needed. That's not the action of someone who was faking feelings. Helena buried her face in his chest, breathed in the scent of him. Let herself feel his arms around her, solid and real and here. I missed you, she whispered. So much. I missed you too. He pressed a kiss to the top of her head. And I'm sorry for how I reacted, for telling you to leave instead of listening, for making you carry all this alone. You had every right to be angry. Maybe. But I should have let you explain. Should have trusted that the woman I knew was in there somewhere beneath the fear. They stood there, holding each other in the fluorescent light of a 24-hour diner, while the world moved on around them. Two broken people trying to figure out if their pieces could fit together. I should get back to work, Helena said eventually. Mel will have questions. And I should go home. Julian pulled back just enough to look at her. But I'll be here at 7. We'll have the worst diner breakfast in the city and start learning each other all over again. Promise. I promise. He kissed her forehead. Soft. Sweet. A beginning instead of an ending. At the door, he turned back. Helena, one more thing. Yeah? Thank you. For being brave enough to fall in love with me in the first place, even if it was complicated, even if it hurt. Thank you for taking that risk. She smiled through fresh tears. Thank you for taking a risk on me now. He left, and Helena watched through the window as he got in his car. Watched him sit there for a moment, hands on the steering wheel, before finally driving away. Mel appeared at her elbow. Friend of yours? Something like that. Looked at you like you hung the moon. Helena smiled. He's giving me a second chance. I don't intend to waste it. Good. Mel squeezed her shoulder. Everyone deserves a second chance, especially people brave enough to ask for one. The rest of Helena's shift passed in a blur. She poured coffee and cleared tables and counted down the hours until 7, until Julian, until they could start building something real. Julian arrived at 6:55. Helena saw his car pull up through the diner window and felt her heart do something complicated in her chest. Nervous, hopeful, terrified, excited, all of it at once. She'd changed out of her uniform in the restroom, just jeans and the same cream sweater she'd worn the first morning in the coffee shop. No calculation this time, just comfort. The bell chimed as he entered. He looked different in the morning light. Softer somehow, more approachable in his casual clothes and slightly messy hair. Hi, Helena said. Hi. His smile was tentative, like he was still figuring out the rules of this new version of them. There's a truly terrible breakfast place 3 blocks from here, Helena said. The kind that serves eggs that have definitely seen better days and coffee that might technically be hazardous. Julian laughed, actually laughed. The sound filled something hollow inside her. Sounds perfect. They walked side by side through the early morning streets. Not touching, but close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. Close enough that their hands kept almost brushing. The restaurant was called Joe's. It was exactly as bad as Helena had promised. Chipped formica tables, vinyl booths with duct tape patches, a menu that looked like it hadn't been updated since 1987. This is the worst place I've ever been, Julian said, sliding into a booth. That was the point. I love it. They ordered coffee that tasted like it had been made yesterday, and eggs that were somehow both overcooked and runny. And then they started talking. Really talking. Tell me something I don't know about you, Julian said. Something real. Something you've never told anyone. Helena thought about it. Decided to go all in. When I was 7, I had a foster mother who used to lock me in a closet when I was bad, which was often because I didn't know how to be what she wanted. I'd sit in the dark for hours, making up stories about a family that would come rescue me. A mother who'd read to me before bed. A father who'd teach me to ride a bike. She looked down at her terrible coffee. It took me years to realize that family wasn't coming, that I had to rescue myself. Julian's hand found hers across the table. I'm sorry that happened to you. It made me who I am. She met his eyes. Taught me how to adapt. How to read people. How to become whatever I needed to be to survive. It's why I was so good at the job. Why I could become exactly the woman you'd fall for. But it's not who you are. No, she smiled sadly. It's what I learned to do. Who I am is still figuring herself out. Julian nodded slowly. My turn? Please. He took a breath. After Sarah died, I tried to kill myself. The words hung in the air like smoke, heavy, suffocating, real. Helena's grip on his hand tightened. Julian, it was 6 months after the accident. Everyone told me it would get better with time, but it didn't. It got worse. The guilt, the pain, the absolute certainty that I should have died instead of her. His voice was steady, but his eyes were haunted. I had the pills, had a plan, was going to do it on what would have been our wedding day. What stopped you? Rose. A ghost of a smile. She showed up at my apartment, somehow new. Sat with me all night. Didn't try to talk me out of it, or tell me it would be okay. Just sat there and held my hand and refused to leave. He looked at Helena. She saved my life that night, and I've been trying to make it mean something ever since. Helena felt tears slip down her cheeks. Thank you for telling me. That's who I really am, Helena. A man who's been broken and put back together wrong, who works too hard because stopping means thinking, who's terrified of loving anyone because everyone I love either leaves or dies. That's not all you are. Helena moved to his side of the booth, took his face in her hands. You're also the man who built a company that helps people, who's kind to strangers, who made me believe in love even when I thought I couldn't. Julian leaned into her touch. We're both disasters, aren't we? The best kind of disasters. She kissed him softly. The kind that might actually make sense together. They stayed at Joe's for 3 hours, telling truths, sharing scars, learning each other without scripts or performance. Helena told him about the foster homes that didn't work out, about aging out of the system with nothing, about teaching herself to read people because it was the only skill she had. Julian told her about the pressure of being an only child, about building his company as a way to prove he deserved the privilege he was born into, about the women who'd tried to use him and how it had made him close off completely. And somewhere in the middle of all that honesty, something shifted. The careful distance between them dissolved. Their hands found each other naturally, their legs pressed together in the booth, their eyes met and held without fear. By the time they left Joe's, the sun was high and bright. The city was awake and bustling, and Helena felt lighter than she had in months. What now? She asked as they stood on the sidewalk. Julian pulled her close. Now? Now we take it one day at a time. We keep being honest, keep figuring each other out, keep choosing this even when it's hard. What about your company, your life? All the things that don't include a failed con artist working night shifts? He smiled. First, you're not a failed anything. You're a woman who made mistakes and owned them. That takes strength. His thumb brushed her cheek. Second, I don't care about any of that. I care about you, the real you. And if that means late-night breakfasts and learning to exist in your world instead of mine, then that's what I want. You say that now. I mean it. His voice was firm. Helena, I've spent 10 years building walls, working myself to death, existing instead of living. And then you crashed into my life and reminded me what it feels like to be human, to want something beyond the next project or the next deal. He kissed her forehead. I don't want to go back to that life, not without you in it. Even knowing how we started? Especially knowing how we started. Julian smiled. Because it means you chose me too. Maybe not at first. Maybe not the way you were supposed to, but you chose me anyway, despite the job, despite the money, despite every reason not to. Helena felt something in her chest crack open, something that had been locked tight for 25 years. Hope. Real, terrifying, beautiful hope. I love you, she whispered. The real you, the broken, brilliant, too good for this world you. I love you too. He pulled her into his arms. The adaptable, strong, still figuring herself out you. They stood there on a busy sidewalk, holding each other like anchors in a storm. Two damaged people who'd found each other in the most complicated way possible. "So what's our story?" Helena asked. "When people ask how we met." Julian laughed. "The truth, I suppose, that you crashed into my life unexpectedly, that we fell for each other despite impossible circumstances, that we're still figuring it out but we're doing it together." "I like that version." "Me too." Over the following months, they rebuilt what they'd lost. Julian introduced Helena to his world slowly. Not the corporate world, that could wait, but his real world. The bookstore where he spent Saturday afternoons, the quiet park where he ran, the small jazz club where he went to think. Helena showed him her world too. The literacy programs she'd mentioned that first night, the volunteer work she did with foster kids, the art classes she took because drawing made her feel grounded. They learned each other's rhythms, learned how to fight without destroying, learned how to apologize, learned how to forgive, and slowly, impossibly, they became them. Not the performed version, not the carefully constructed romance, just two people choosing each other every single day. 6 months after that morning at Joe's, Julian brought Helena back to Rose's brownstone. His grandmother opened the door with a knowing smile. "Took you long enough to bring her back?" "We needed time," Julian said. "Clearly." Rose pulled Helena into an unexpected hug. "Welcome back, child. I knew you'd figure it out." Over lunch, which Rose had definitely not made herself despite her protests, the old woman regaled them with stories from her own marriage, the fights, the make-ups, the moments of doubt and the moments of absolute certainty. "Love isn't a straight line," she said, pointing her fork at them. "It's a mess. It's complicated. It's choosing the same person over and over even when they drive you absolutely mad." "That's not very romantic, grandmother," Julian said. "Romance is for movies." Rose waved dismissively. "Real love is showing up. It's forgiveness. It's work. And it's worth every difficult moment." Helena squeezed Julian's hand under the table. "I'm learning that." After lunch, they walked through Rose's garden, the same garden where Julian had first told her he loved her months ago. "I want to thank you," Helena said quietly. "For what?" "For giving me a second chance, for seeing past the lies to the truth underneath, for being brave enough to trust me again." Julian stopped walking, turned to face her. "Helena, you gave me a second chance too. A chance to live again, to feel again, to be more than just work and grief." He reached into his pocket, pulled out a small velvet box. Helena's breath caught. Her heart hammered against her ribs so hard she thought it might break free. "I bought this 3 months ago," Julian said, his voice trembling slightly. "Right after that morning at Joe's, when we decided to start over, to build something real." He opened the box. Inside was a ring that caught the fading sunlight and transformed it into something magical, a delicate band of rose gold with a single diamond that wasn't ostentatious or showy, but perfect, elegant, timeless, exactly her. "I carried it with me every day since," he continued, his dark eyes never leaving hers, "waiting for the right moment, waiting until I was sure we'd built something strong enough to last." Helena's vision blurred with tears. "Julian, let me say this. Please." His thumb brushed across her knuckles. "These past 6 months have been the most honest, the most real, the most beautiful months of my life. You've shown me who you truly are. The woman who volunteers with foster kids because she knows their pain. The woman who takes art classes because creating something makes her feel whole. The woman who works harder than anyone I know and never complains." He took a shaky breath. "You've seen me at my worst, broken, angry, terrified, and you didn't run. You stayed. You fought for us when I wanted to give up. You chose me every single day, even when I didn't deserve it." Julian dropped to one knee, right there in his grandmother's garden, surrounded by roses and memories and the golden light of sunset. Helena's hand flew to her mouth. Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. "Helena Adams," he said, his voice cracking with emotion. You crashed into my life in the most complicated, messy, beautiful way possible. And I don't want to spend another day without you. I want the fights and the makeups. I want the ordinary mornings and the extraordinary moments. I want to build a life with you, a real one, an honest one. He lifted the ring from the box. Will you marry me? Will you choose me? Not because someone hired you to, but because you want to? Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving that you made the right choice? For a moment, Helena couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, could only stare at this man who'd seen every part of her, even the broken pieces, and loved her anyway. Yes. The word came out as a sob. Yes, Julian. Yes. He slid the ring onto her finger. Left hand this time. Fourth finger. Where it belonged. Then he stood and pulled her into his arms, lifting her off her feet as he kissed her. Deep, passionate, full of promise and hope and everything they'd fought so hard to build. When they finally broke apart, both laughing through tears, Helena held up her hand to watch the ring catch the light. It's perfect, she whispered. How did you know exactly what I'd want? Because I know you. Julian pressed his forehead to hers. The real you, not the version you thought you had to be, but the woman who reads poetry at midnight and cries at classical music and makes me believe in second chances. Helena cupped his face in her hands. I love you. So much it terrifies me. Good, he smiled. I love you too. Terrifyingly, completely, forever. They stood there as the sun painted the sky in shades of amber and rose, two people who'd found each other in the most unlikely way, who'd broken each other and healed each other and chosen each other despite every reason not to. So, Helena said, resting her head on his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. I'm going to be Mrs. Kingsley. If you want to be. His arms tightened around her. Or you can keep your name, or we can hyphenate. I don't care what you're called, as long as you're mine. Ours, she corrected, as long as we're each other's. Even better. From the kitchen window, Rose Kingsley watched the scene unfold in her garden. She smiled, wiped a tear from her weathered cheek, and whispered to no one in particular. About time, you stubborn fools. Their story hadn't started with honesty, but it would continue with it. And their future? Their future would be built on truth, on choice, on the kind of love that survives mistakes and grows stronger because of them. Helena looked at the ring on her finger one more time, not a symbol of deception or performance, but a symbol of everything real they'd created together. Ready to tell your grandmother? Julian asked. Ready to tell the world, Helena replied. And hand in hand, engaged and entirely certain, they walked back toward the house where family waited, where their next chapter was about to begin, where their beautiful, complicated, perfectly imperfect love story would continue, one honest day at a time.